There was a time when life took everything from me, my confidence, my plans, my silence, my smile. I didn't become strong that day. I became quiet. But in that silence, something powerful was born, because when life takes everything, it leaves you with one choice: disappear or find your voice. When life takes everything, it doesn't knock politely. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't explain itself. It arrives like a storm in the middle of a calm night, tearing roofs off dreams you were still living under. It pulls the ground from beneath your feet when you are still learning how to stand. It steals things you never imagined you would have to live without: your certainty, your confidence, your sense of safety, your idea of who you were supposed to become. I know this because life once took everything from me, not slowly, not gently, all at once. One moment I had plans, and the next I had silence. One moment I had a future I could describe, and the next I had questions with no answers. One moment I believed life was fair, and the next I realized life doesn't promise fairness, it only offers choices. People think loss is loud, they think it screams, but the most dangerous losses are quiet. They happen inside you, when hope begins to whisper instead of speak, when confidence starts apologizing for existing, when your voice, the one that used to dream, laugh, and demand more, slowly disappears. I didn't lose everything in one day. I lost it piece by piece. I lost the version of myself who thought strength meant never breaking. I lost the illusion that effort guarantees reward. I lost the comfort of certainty, the belief that tomorrow would look like today. And then, one day, I lost my voice, not physically, but spiritually. I stopped saying what I felt. I stopped asking for what I deserved. I stopped believing my story mattered, because when life takes everything, it leaves you with shame. It whispers, maybe you deserved this. It convinces you that your pain is proof of your failure. So I became quiet. I smiled when I wanted to scream. I nodded when I wanted to run. I stayed silent because silence felt safer than disappointment. People praised my strength, but they didn't see my surrender. They said, "You're so brave," while I was just trying to survive another day without collapsing. And that is the truth. No one tells you survival can look like strength from the outside, but inside it feels like drowning slowly. There were days when waking up felt heavier than any physical pain. Days when I questioned whether hope was a lie we tell ourselves to stay alive. Days when faith felt like a language I no longer understood. I asked God questions I was afraid to say out loud. I asked life why it chose me. I asked myself what I did wrong, and life answered with silence. But here is what silence does if you stay in it long enough. It forces you to listen. Not to the noise of the world, not to the opinions of people, but to the truth buried beneath your pain. I began to realize something uncomfortable. Life didn't take everything to punish me. It took everything to strip me. To remove what was fake, to remove what was borrowed, to remove what was built on approval instead of purpose. When you lose everything, you stop performing. You stop pretending. You stop chasing applause. Because there is nothing left to impress anyone with. And in that emptiness, something unexpected happens. You meet yourself, not the version shaped by expectations, not the version polished for society, but the raw, unfinished, trembling version that still breathes even after being broken. That version of me was scared, but she was honest, and honesty became the beginning of my voice. At first, it was weak. A whisper barely louder than my fear. It said, "I am hurting." It said, "I am tired." It said, "I don't know how to continue." And for the first time, I didn't silence it. I didn't rush to be positive. I didn't hide behind gratitude quotes. I didn't shame myself for feeling broken. I let myself feel, because pain ignored doesn't disappear, it multiplies. Pain acknowledged begins to heal. Every tear I allowed myself to cry became a word. Every sleepless night became a sentence. Every unanswered prayer became a story. Slowly, my silence started turning into language. I found my voice not when life became easy, but when I stopped running from my truth. I began to speak, not to be heard, but to survive. I spoke in prayers that sounded like arguments. I spoke in journals no one would read. I spoke in moments of courage when my hands were shaking, and something powerful happened. The more I spoke my truth, the less power my pain had over me, because pain thrives in secrecy, but it weakens when exposed to light. Life had taken everything: comfort, certainty, identity, but it had left me one thing. The choice to stay silent or to speak, the choice to remain broken or to rise broken and still move forward, the choice to let my pain define me or to let it teach me, and I chose to speak, not because I was strong, but because silence was killing me. I learned that your voice isn't something you're born with. It's something you reclaim, from fear, from shame, from trauma, from the versions of yourself that were told to stay small. Your voice is not volume. It is truth, and truth doesn't need permission. When life takes everything, it removes distractions. It removes masks. It removes excuses. And if you listen closely, it asks you one question: who are you without all of this? That question changed me, because without the titles, without the plans, without the validation, I was still here, breathing, feeling, existing, and existence itself became my rebellion. I realized that being alive after everything I had lost was not weakness. It was proof that something inside me refused to die, that something became my voice. Finding your voice doesn't mean the fear disappears. It means you decide fear no longer gets the final word. When I began to speak my truth, the world didn't suddenly become kind. People didn't magically understand. Life didn't apologize for the pain it caused. In fact, some people became uncomfortable, because when you find your voice, you stop being convenient. You stop being silent, you stop being easy to ignore, and not everyone wants to hear a survivor speak. Some want you healed quietly. Some want your pain inspirational but distant. Some want your strength without the honesty that comes with it. But I learned something important: my healing was not their responsibility to approve. For a long time, I believed that my worth depended on how well I hid my wounds. I thought dignity meant silence. I thought grace meant endurance without complaint, but endurance without truth is slow self-destruction. There is a difference between patience and suppression, between faith and denial, between strength and silence forced by fear. I had been silent not because I was strong, but because I was afraid of being seen as broken. Society teaches us that pain should be private, that suffering should be graceful, that if you talk too much about what hurt you, you are weak. But pain doesn't heal by being hidden. It heals by being honored. The moment I honored my pain, it transformed. It stopped being a cage. It became a classroom. I began to understand that what I lost did not define me, what I learned from the loss did. Loss taught me humility, it taught me empathy, it taught me that strength is not the absence of tears, but the courage to continue while crying. I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started asking, what is this trying to teach me? That question didn't erase my pain, but it gave it purpose. And purpose is powerful. When pain finds purpose, it becomes a voice that says, I survived. A voice that says, I am still here. A voice that says, my story matters. I realized that my voice wasn't meant to shout above others, it was meant to reach those drowning in silence. Because somewhere, someone was living the life I had just survived. Someone was questioning their worth the way I had. Someone was blaming themselves for pain they didn't choose. And if my voice could reach even one of them, then my pain was not wasted. That realization changed the way I saw everything. I stopped seeing myself as a victim of life. I started seeing myself as a witness to resilience, a witness to faith tested and refined, a witness to the truth that even after everything is taken, something always remains, and that something is choice. I chose to speak even when my voice shook. I chose to stand even when my legs felt weak. I chose to believe that my life was still meaningful even if it looked nothing like what I had planned. Plans are fragile. Purpose is not. Life may take your plans, it may take your comfort, it may take your certainty, but it cannot take your purpose unless you surrender it. I learned that my voice was not about telling people how strong I was, it was about reminding myself. Every time I spoke my truth, I reclaimed a piece of myself that pain had tried to steal. I stopped apologizing for my existence. I stopped shrinking to fit spaces that couldn't hold my truth. I stopped measuring my worth by my productivity or perfection. I began to measure my life by my honesty, and honesty changed my relationships. Some people left because they preferred the quiet version of me. Some people stayed because they recognized their own pain in my truth. And I learned to let both happen. Not everyone is meant to walk with you after you find your voice. Some were only meant to know the silent version of you, and that's okay. Growth requires release. When life takes everything, it also shows you who stays. Who listens, who respects your becoming. Your voice will cost you comfort, but it will give you freedom, freedom from pretending, freedom from pleasing, freedom from the fear of being misunderstood. Because the truth is being misunderstood, while being honest is better than being praised while being silent. I no longer wanted applause, I wanted peace, and peace came when my words finally matched my wounds. When I stopped hiding behind strength and allowed myself to be real. There is power in saying, I am not okay. There is courage in saying, I need help. There is healing in saying, this hurt me. Your voice is not arrogance. It is acknowledgement, and acknowledgement is the first step toward transformation. Life had taken everything external from me, but it gave me something internal, perspective. I understood that nothing that truly belongs to you can be taken away. Not your faith, not your values, not your ability to love, not your voice. Your voice may be buried under fear, trauma, or loss, but it is never destroyed. It waits patiently for you to choose it. And when you do, it will change not just your life, but the lives of those who hear it and finally feel less alone. When you find your voice, something unexpected happens. You stop asking the world for permission to exist. Before, I waited for approval, for validation, for someone to tell me, you're allowed to heal now. But healing doesn't come with permission slips. It comes with responsibility. The responsibility to choose yourself even when it's uncomfortable. The responsibility to stand in your truth even when your voice shakes. The responsibility to stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. I had spent so much of my life being agreeable, adaptable, acceptable. I learned how to survive by shrinking, by softening my edges, by carrying pain quietly so no one would feel burdened. But silence was costing me my identity. Every time I stayed quiet to keep peace, I declared war on myself. Every time I swallowed my truth, my soul paid the price, and then one day I realized something heartbreaking and liberating at the same time. No one was coming to save me, not because people didn't care, but because saving myself was my responsibility. That realization didn't make me bitter. It made me brave, because if I was strong enough to survive what broke me, I was strong enough to rebuild what remained. I stopped waiting for life to return what it had taken. I started building with what was left, and what was left was more than enough. I had scars, but scars are proof of healing. I had wounds, but wounds are evidence of survival. I had pain, but pain is a powerful teacher if you listen. I began to speak not only about what hurt me, but about what it taught me. Pain taught me boundaries. Pain taught me self-respect. Pain taught me that love without safety is not love. I learned that saying no was not rejection, it was protection. I learned that rest was not laziness, it was recovery. I learned that choosing myself was not selfish, it was necessary. And with every lesson, my voice became stronger. It stopped trembling. It stopped apologizing. It started grounding itself in truth. I began to understand that my voice was not meant to echo anger, it was meant to carry wisdom. Anger screams. Wisdom speaks. I didn't want to shout about my pain anymore. I wanted to transform it, So I asked myself a powerful question: how can my suffering serve someone else's survival? That question gave my pain direction. I started sharing my story not to relive my wounds, but to light the path for someone walking behind me. Because pain without purpose becomes bitterness, but pain with purpose becomes power. I watched people listen not because my story was perfect, but because it was honest. I watched eyes soften. I watched shoulders relax. I watched people realize they weren't alone. And in those moments I understood. My voice was never just for me. It was for the ones who thought they were too broken to be heard, for the ones who believed silence was their destiny. For the ones who had been told their pain was too much. Your story doesn't have to be dramatic to be meaningful. It doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. It just has to be true. I learned that when you speak your truth with compassion, you give others permission to do the same. That is impact, not fame, not applause, not recognition. Impact is when your honesty becomes someone else's hope, and hope is revolutionary. Life had taken everything I thought defined me, but it gave me clarity. I no longer chased success that required my silence. I no longer accepted love that demanded my suffering. I no longer stayed in spaces where my voice was unwelcome. Because I learned this truth the hard way. You don't lose people. When you find your voice, you lose the wrong one. And losing the wrong ones makes room for the right ones. I stopped mourning what left. I started honoring what stayed. My faith stayed. My resilience stayed. My ability to rise stayed, and my voice it stayed. Stronger than ever. Life didn't take everything. It took the illusions. It took the false security. It took the versions of me that were built on fear instead of truth. And in return, it gave me something real. A voice rooted in experience, a strength shaped by survival, a purpose born from pain. I stopped asking life to be gentle with me. I asked myself to be brave, because bravery is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward while afraid. And I was afraid of being judged, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of being seen, but fear no longer controlled me, because once you have lost everything, fear loses its power. What was the worst that could happen? I had already survived it. That realization freed me. I began to live louder, not in volume, but in truth. I began to love deeper, starting with myself. I began to walk forward, carrying my past without letting it define my steps. My voice was no longer just a sound. It was a statement that said, I am still here. I am still becoming. I am not done. There comes a point in pain where logic fails you, where advice sounds hollow, where motivation feels offensive, where people say, stay positive, and you wonder if they understand the weight you're carrying. That is where faith is tested. Not the kind of faith that speaks in quotes, but the kind that breathes through broken lungs. I used to think faith meant certainty, that believing meant never doubting, that trusting God meant never questioning Him. I was wrong. Faith is not confidence in outcomes. Faith is commitment in uncertainty. It is choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. It is choosing to believe when evidence is absent. It is choosing hope not because life is kind, but because despair is dangerous. There were nights when my prayers didn't sound holy. They sounded tired. They sounded angry. They sounded like, I don't understand, but I'm still here. And I learned something powerful. God does not require polished prayers. He honors honest ones. Faith does not collapse because of questions. It collapses because of silence. So I spoke even when my words were messy. I spoke my fear. I spoke my doubt. I spoke my exhaustion. And instead of losing faith, I found a deeper one. A faith that didn't depend on miracles. A faith that survived disappointment. A faith that stayed even when answers didn't come. Life had taken control from me, and for the first time I stopped trying to take it back. I surrendered, not because I was weak, but because I was tired of fighting battles I couldn't win alone. Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is trusting what you cannot see. It is saying, I don't know how this will work out, but I trust that I will. That shift changed everything. I stopped asking for my old life back. I started asking for strength to live the new one, and strength came quietly, not as confidence, not as clarity, but as endurance, the ability to wake up and try again, the courage to face days without guarantees, the resilience to keep moving even when progress was invisible. Resilience is not dramatic, it is repetitive. It is choosing hope again and again and again, even when yesterday didn't reward it. Some days hope looked like getting out of bed. Some days it looked like asking for help. Some days it looked like resting without guilt. And on the hardest days, hope looked like survival. I stopped measuring my faith by how strong I felt. I measured it by how long I stayed. I stayed when quitting would have been easier. I stayed when bitterness tried to move in. I stayed when my past whispered that nothing would change. Staying became my miracle, and slowly something shifted inside me. I stopped seeing my brokenness as failure. I started seeing it as humanity. I stopped demanding perfection from myself. I started offering compassion, and compassion softened me in ways strength never could. I learned that healing is not about becoming who you were, it's about becoming who you are now. Stronger, wiser, more aware. I stopped waiting for closure. I accepted continuation. Life doesn't always close chapters neatly. Sometimes it leaves pages torn and unfinished, but unfinished does not mean meaningless. Your story is still being written even when the ink is messy. I realized that my voice was not meant to explain everything. It was meant to testify, to say I don't have all the answers, but I'm still standing. To say I was broken, but I wasn't buried. To say I am a work in progress, and that is enough. Faith taught me that pain does not disqualify you from purpose. It prepares you for it. Resilience taught me that falling does not make you weak. Staying down does, and hope, real hope, taught me this. Even when life takes everything, it cannot take what you choose to carry forward. I chose faith, I chose truth, I chose my voice, and with that choice I stepped into the unknown, not fearless, but faithful. Type next for part 5 of 5. The final part will be powerful, uplifting, and unforgettable, your closing legacy message. Next here is part 5 of 5, the final, most powerful closing of your motivational speech. When life took everything, I found my voice. If you are listening to me right now, I want you to know something important. You are not weak because you are tired. You are not faithless because you are questioning. You are not broken beyond repair because life has been hard on you. You are human, and being human in a world that demands perfection is an act of courage. Life may have taken your comfort. It may have taken your plans. It may have taken people, health, dreams, or years you can never get back. But if you are still breathing, if you are still feeling, if you are still searching for meaning, then life has not taken everything. There is still something inside you waiting to rise. I found my voice not on the day I became strong, but on the day I stopped pretending I was. I found my voice when I admitted I was scared, when I admitted I was hurting, when I admitted I needed help. That honesty saved me, because your voice is not meant to impress the world. It is meant to save your soul. You don't need to be fearless to speak. You just need to be real. Speak even if your voice trembles. Speak even if your story is unfinished. Speak even if you think no one is listening, because the moment you speak your truth, you reclaim your power. Someone out there is waiting for your words. Someone is surviving on the hope you don't realize you carry. Someone needs to hear that they are not alone, and your voice can be the proof. Do not underestimate the impact of your survival. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more honest ones, more people who say, I struggled, but I stayed, more people who say, I broke, but I rebuilt, more people who say, life tried to silence me and failed. When life took everything, I didn't become bitter. I became aware of what matters, aware of who matters, aware of the strength that exists even in the quietest hearts. And now, I choose to use my voice not to shout, not to blame, but to remind. To remind you that pain is not the end of your story. To remind you that your past does not own your future. To remind you that your voice, your truth, your existence matters. Stand in your truth. Honor your pain. Trust your becoming, because when life takes everything, it gives you the opportunity to find yourself. And when you find your voice, nothing can take it away again. If you are still here, your story is not over. Speak it, live it, own it. Your voice is your victory.